I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Total Apex Sports Off the Wall Baseball Podcast. I'm here once again with Brandon, and we are bringing you a special episode today. We're going to talk a little bit about some big news that came out of LA regarding Edwin Diaz, their closer, and then we're also going to talk a little bit about the upcoming Boston-Baltimore head-to-head series that we got going on there. So, Brandon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. This will be a little shorter video, just to make up for last week missing the pod. We know it was family emergency on Chris's end. Hopefully everything's fine with that, obviously. But just giving y'all some content to make up for last week not having a pod. So that's why we're here. Let's get it.
Absolutely. So, like I said, we're going to be starting off with Edwin Diaz. He was obviously the Los Angeles Dodgers closer, and one of the things that the Dodgers sort of have had for a while, if they had any flaws in their roster, it was definitely their bullpen, right? And Edwin Diaz was sort of meant to be, the anchor, right? We see how the loss of Edwin Diaz has already impacted the Mets. Right, and sort of the instability in their bullpen now. And so he was pitching fairly well for the Dodgers, and he ended up getting injured, right, this week. They said he had foreign bodies in his elbow. He went in for surgery. They're expecting him out for probably until the second half of the season, is what I understand, right?
3 months.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 months.
Yeah, so that would land in July, August. So going to be out for a decent portion of the season. How do you think that's going to impact the Dodgers, Brandon?
You know what? The last few games they've played since the injury hasn't really impacted them because the bats have come alive a little bit more for LA. The bats have come to they've been scoring runs left and right with that lineup since the Edwin Diaz injury, and they still have the best pitching rotation in the league in their starting rotation right now with Yamamoto and Snell, guys like that in the rotation. But I think the Diaz, if they get into a bullpen game, they might have to make the move like we've been talking about with rookie Sasaki, to move him to the bullpen, at least until Edwin comes back. They might have to just make that move until Edwin comes back. I know they want him to be a starter in this league. Obviously, they want to have him as a start, as an option as a starting pitcher. But they already got so much depth at the starting pitching position, and they might have to just move one of those guys. And I think Sasaki's the guy because of the playoffs last year, like we've been saying on the Off the Wall Baseball Show here at Total Apex Media for the last couple podcasts we've done. We have said it. And I think the Edwin Diaz injury creates that opportunity for Dave Roberts to put him in the bullpen. So,
absolutely, I agree. I think that's sort of the best case scenario for them would be to. I think it solves multiple issues for them, right? Because they need somebody else in that bullpen, that's sort of anchoring that bullpen for them now. Roki Sasaki has proven he has the capability to do that, and he's sort of a liability as a starting pitcher right now. And they have the depth at starting pitching. We talked about that before, but they have the depth where, he could move out and they could actually improve. It's not like they're forced to have him in that rotation when they've got 7-8 potential legitimate MLB starters, in their system. That could perform as good, if not better than him as it is, And I think it's important to note, too, the Dodgers been doing this. I mean, obviously Diaz was expected to be, a fantastic closer for them, but he hadn't been yet, right? And now knowing, what was going on with his elbow, it makes a bit more sense, but his velocity was down. He wasn't striking batters out as much. The contact rates were higher. His swinging strike rate had cut essentially in half from
Yeah.
the previous 2 years.
Yeah.
So he was converting the saves that he needed to, but his numbers weren't great. So in a way, um, replacing him on paper is isn't that hard to what he was currently
Doing.
performing at. You know what I mean? And so so that's another factor of it as well. I mean, I think, you know, in terms of how it impacts them right now, I mean, I think obviously, it just makes the bullpen lighter. But like I said, Diaz wasn't pitching great, so it's not a massive loss statistically right now. You know what I mean? I think the numbers are fairly replaceable, but
Right.
the bigger issue is finding somebody who's got the mentality to be a closer night in and night out, right? Because as much as his statistics may not have been great, he was their ninth inning guy, right? You knew who was going to come in at that time. It wasn't, we've seen teams such as the Red Sox, try to do bullpen by committee and try to play around with who's going to be their closer, have it be one person one day, one person another day, and it doesn't work out really, as much as, I mean, certain teams can do it. I know Tampa Bay has done it in the past, and, they're a whole separate, entity. I feel like they always make magic happen, but by and large, bullpens by committee don't work, and so it really helps to have that guy that you just know, no matter that is the closer period. You've got that established, so they're going to want to find somebody that becomes that role, just if for no other reason than to make sure everybody in the bullpen kind of has an idea of what their role is and they can prep in that capacity, so like you said, I think Roki Sasaki is the best bet, but if not, I mean, they obviously they have Scott in the bullpen that's been taking over in the short term.
Yeah.
I mean, he's certainly capable. He's struggled a little bit since he's come to the Dodgers, but he's certainly capable. Or, I could see them, feeling around in the trade market too. I mean, I don't know how quickly that
Yeah.
would happen. You know what I mean? I don't know if teams are really ready to ship players off yet, unless it's for a haul. But at some point, depending on how Diaz's recovery goes, I could certainly see them looking for, some help. I mean, I don't know who that would be. If the Mets keep struggling as bad as they are, maybe Devin Williams would become available,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any other marquee closers that are on teams that are seriously struggling right now. But I'm sure they could find somebody. The Dodgers always do, But that would be more if Diaz is really struggling in his recovery and they think it's going to take longer, and or Tanner Scott, or if they do move Roki Sasaki into the bullpen and he struggles there, if they're struggling to fill that role, I could see them trying to make a move sooner than later.
Yeah, for sure. I think right now the plan for Sasaki is he's still starting right now. He
Mm-hmm.
made his last start 4.2 innings against Colorado
Yeah.
on the 19th, so a week ago. Basically, so I think he's on track to still make his next start, I guess. So for LA, let me look real quick and see what. Yeah, Glassnow was on the mound last night. I'm gonna look. They're playing the Giants this weekend, so I'm gonna try to look at while we're on here the game for today, which is the 24th against Chicago. Sasaki is starting in the second game against the Cubs this weekend in Chicago, or no, at home against
Okay.
Chicago. So in LA. So he is still on the rotation. So I don't know what's going on with that. I mean, they have this weekend they have Shaheen, Sasaki, and Robleski. So starting so and everything like that. So looks like you're computer's back up, dude.
Yeah, apparently it is.
Computer's back up. No, we'll just keep it like this for right now since we're in the flow.
Yeah, absolutely.
But back to what I was saying, technology, gotta love it.
I know, right?
So it looks like the plan is to keep Sasaki in the rotation, for what it looks like right now, which I could see why they're doing that. Try to make a situation, kind of like trying to multiply it by putting him back in the bullpen, but temporarily until Diaz comes back is not always the best look either.
Mm-hmm.
So I get why they're doing that. But I feel like to get the benefit of it, I think it would be better to have Sasaki in the bullpen because he's only going 4 2/3 innings anyway right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then all his starts so far, he has not really cracked the 5th inning, 6th inning yet.
Yeah.
A lot of his starts. So like
Exactly,
he's not eating the innings that they need as a starting pitcher. So I think Dave is won the last 2 World Series as manager. Now I know he gets flack because the team is so talented, but Dave has made the balls when he's needed to these last couple years. So we'll see how Roberts approaches it as the next 3 months goes along. So.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you look at so he made 8 starts last season, for 36 1/3 innings, right? So that's, he wasn't averaging 5 innings last year either, right? He gave up 6 home runs in those 8 starts, so his stat 22 walks and only 28 strikeouts. That's pretty bad, right? His FIP was 580, and he's actually even worse this season. It hasn't gotten better. It's gotten even worse, right? Yeah. Not just in ERA. Obviously, his ERA is over 6. He made 4 starts, 17 innings. So, again, he's at about 4 1/3 innings on average, right? He's already given up 4 home runs, which means he's only 2 short of last year, right? His walks and strikeout rate is terrible again, 12-17. His FIP is over 6 now as well. So, if you just go down the line, the only thing that's better is his strikeouts per 9 and better, but that's counteracted with a worse walks per 9, right? So, I mean, it's just, and he has now, he at least earned some positive WAR last year, BWAR. This year he's at -3.3 already. I mean, he's literally a negative asset for the Dodgers at this point. So I don't know how much longer they can afford to play around. I mean, they're a good team. They're a great team. So at the same time, they have a little bit of flexibility to let him develop. But at some point, you need to see some sort of improvement. And you're not seeing that at all. If anything, you're seeing, him slip, even further. So I don't know. I mean, something's got to give. I mean, maybe they see something we don't. Maybe they're working on something on the side that they have confidence in. I certainly have. If I was gonna back any team to figure something out, it would be the Dodgers. They certainly have a fantastic track record with players, but in this case, I'm not sure I'm seeing what they're seeing to keep giving them the chance.
Yeah. I think right now the Dodgers are 17-8, one of the best records in the league. They're still the best one, if not the best team in baseball. They'll be fine without Diaz. Let's go ahead and get into our preview for our series between our 2 teams. Starting first, real taste of American League East play for these 2 this season. Well, Dawson got a taste of that last couple days with the Yankees, but the Orioles, this is really the first real test of the American League East for them and their young squad. We got Bello on the mound for Boston tonight, and then Brandon Young, who had that shutout, 5 innings of shutout ball the other week. While they were still in rotation, they called him back up because Kramer is on the IL again with a quad issue for Baltimore. So that's why Brandon Young's in this slot tonight. I think it was going to be Kramer again before his quad injury. So with that being said, Khris, your thoughts on this important series for Boston as we get into I
mean, Boston needs all the help it can get right now. I mean, we're 9-16. We're, And the thing is, you know, most games haven't even been interesting to watch for Boston. Like you pretty much known it's over after like one inning
Yeah.
because they'll give up three runs in the first inning, and you just figure it's insurmountable at that point because the offense has been absolutely deplorable this season. Absolutely horrible. And that's on Craig Breslow for how he built the roster. He sort of punted on offense, admittedly, saying he was focused on pitching and defense. But, when I thought the roster had potential. I thought the offense would be a lot better than it has been. I think that it has more potential than what we're seeing. And I saw a stat on X the other day. I want to make sure I get the semblance of the numbers. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but it was something like the Red Sox hit 13 home runs and 130 something at bats in the World Baseball Classic, and now they've hit 13 home runs and 700 and some odd at bats in the actual season. And that's just the story, right? It's just they can't hit home runs, they can't score when they need to, and when they do have a lead, they're blowing it. They had a couple leads against the Yankees and they blew it in the later innings. Just anything that could go wrong is their starting pitching hasn't looked great. Even Crochet hasn't had a great start to the series, the season. Just anything that could go wrong will. And that, do I think that they're gonna, like, if there'll be some balance here at some point, right? I think they're gonna, eventually have to, come more towards the mean, right? A little bit, regression towards the mean. I think they're well below, the average of what they could be doing. But have they dug themselves too big of a hole? Possibly. Now, do I think the matchup against Baltimore, I feel like, pitching wise, the offense should be able to do something against Baltimore's pitching, but they haven't done anything against anybody else's pitching. They got shut out by May, which was humiliating, based on how he pitched for us last year, right? So I don't have any confidence in anything at this point. I'd love to say I think this would be a good series. I think both teams need, a little bit of bounce back here, need to use this series as a way to sort of jump back into the front of the pack there, a little bit. Obviously Baltimore's a lot closer than Boston is right now, but I don't see Boston doing well. I think they're going to lose 2 out of 3 personally. And I hate saying that, but I see no evidence that anything is changing,
We do get the Crochet Rogers matchup on Saturday.
That'll be fun
in this game. We get the Trevor Rogers, even though Rogers in his last couple starts has struggled. His last 2 starts, which is not Trevor Rogers. Like, I don't know what's going on with him there. I think his first 2 starts are what we tend to know him as an underrated ace, and the last 2 have been kind of putrid from his standards. I'll say that. Sure. Tonight's game will be interesting. Depends on who they, how Boston plays it, and Baltimore plays it with the lineup. I think Albernas is going to go to his righty heavy lineup against Crochet, the lefty.
For sure.
You'll probably only see Henderson being the only lefty in the starting lineup tomorrow.
For sure.
Tomorrow afternoon. Because of it, because and I hate that, because Basalo can't hit lefties. Cowser has been terrible all against both sides, so I don't think you'll see him in the starting lineup tomorrow. You'll probably see Adley catching, which is a good sign because Adley's back. He came back that Royal Series, which the Royal Series offensively for Baltimore, you averaged you averaged what this season, the 3 games, close to 7 runs a game, close to 7. They had 5 in the 1 loss in Kansas City. The bullpen kind of blew that one late with Housley's wild pitch. Speaking of, he's out because of bereavement right now and family matter. Hopefully he's okay. Prayers out to the Housley family and everything like that. But the Nunez came in and got the save against Kansas City the last game of that series. So I think if Helsley is back by the weekend, great. If not, Nunez can handle his role until he comes back.
Mm-hmm.
Confident that. I'm also confident in the bullpen being better than Boston's overall because most of the Orioles bullpen has been better than Boston's overall so far. There has been a few guys like Wells, who's not been great. Wolfram is okay, but if Cano, uh, Nunez, Garcia pitch in this series, it's and they have a lead. Garcia still hasn't allowed a hit in his 11 innings yet, at all. He's allowed base runners, but he hasn't allowed the hit. So that's I think one of the first times in a long time I saw that someone has gone 11 straight innings out of the bullpen without giving up a hit to start the season. I think I saw that stat like a couple weeks ago. So good for Baltimore to finding that kind of a piece in their bullpen. Your Cano has had a great season, the bounce back season for him. I mean, the bullpen for Baltimore is underrated on paper right now, just because they have given up some leads and stuff like that. Like I said, the Kansas City series, they gave up that where they lost to Kansas City after Adley's home run, go ahead home run on Tuesday. Tuesday. Like I said too, the one thing I do want to talk about here with Baltimore is their offense as well is kind of like inconsistent at times. The bottom of the order guys have actually hit well. Like Jeremiah Jackson's had a resurgence, kind of like a breakout kind of season that no one really expected. He's leading the team in RBIs right now with 19. He's hit with runners on base very well. He's close to Gunnar on home runs too. Like Gunnar still leads the team in home runs with 7, but Gunner's not hitting consistently like Gunnar Henderson right now. He's only hitting 189 right now. And he's had a slump ever since before the Cleveland's. Actually, at the tail end of the Giants series, he was starting to struggle a little bit against Arizona. And then the Cleveland series was not great for Gunnar Henderson either. And then you had the Kansas City series, which was ups and downs for him, but mostly downs again. So Pete finally got going against Waka. I think if Pete Alonso keeps hitting the way he has, that could counteract Gunner's struggles until Gunnar gets back to being hot. Gunnar Henderson. I think Gunnar Henderson will step up this weekend in Baltimore. I really do. I don't think he'll go 0-4, 0-5 from most of the entirety again, but you never know with baseball. It could be that every day. I think the Crochet game might be his worst game because lefties he's had trouble. I know he's hit a couple lefty homers this year. But I think that's still the plan with him against the lefty's going to attack the outside, and until he proves he can hit the outside and hit it the other way, that will be their plan. And I think Crochet is going to use that effectively. I'm like you. I don't think Baltimore sweeps. I think Baltimore gets 2 or 3 against the Red Sox. I do think the Crochet game is the one toss-up game for me that I could see Boston winning because Crochet can be back to his dominant form, and Rogers might give up 1, 2, 3 runs maybe, and it might be too much for Baltimore on Saturday afternoon to come back from. But I do know one thing for sure: the Baltimore Orioles this season have gotten behind and shown some resiliency to come back in games this year. So if they do get
must
behind,
be nice.
if they do get behind against Boston this weekend, I am confident they'll eke out a couple of those wins just because of how their mentality has been this season. They did it Cleveland. They did it again. They almost did it against Kansas City. Like I said, on Tuesday, they were behind most of that game. They were behind, I think, again on Monday against Kansas City, if I remember correctly. And they were down 7-1. I think it was, they were down a big chunk to Cleveland, one of the games against Cleveland. Then they scored, or they were, no, was it? I can't remember which game it was. Oh, no, it was the Diamondbacks. They're down. They were down 6 against the Diamondbacks in that series on that Monday, and they came back to win 9-7. So they have resilience. Baltimore Orioles team. I do like Jeremiah Jackson's hitting. I do like him in the field, which brings up the Jackson aspect of it too. He's still on rehab down in AAA right now. He did have some hand discomfort in
Mm-hmm.
one of his last rehab starts, so he had to get pulled. But when Jackson Holiday comes back, that's going to create an issue lineup wise. To see because Jeremiah, you can't take out Jeremiah Jackson. You just can't. The way he's hitting right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
he might have to be starting to play third until Westbrook comes back. And then when Westbrook comes back and Jeremiah Jackson's still hitting, will be that'll be an interesting dynamic. But
Mm-hmm.
when that in that situation, but we won't see Westbrook for a while. Probably he's on the 60-day IL right now, so he'd probably be like at least a couple more months, if that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you got Jeremiah Jackson hitting, you got Leody Taveras hitting, guys like that hitting for
Yeah.
Baltimore instead of your Gunners and your Pete's. Taylor Ward still consistent up top
Mm-hmm.
as one of the up top guys. Adley was still hitting pretty good until his injury. I mean, like I say, he came back against Kansas City, but they did decide to start Basalo again in the last game, and Basalo had a couple of nights
Mm-hmm.
as well. The main thing with the issue with Baltimore this year has been the timely hit, and other than a couple guys like Gunnar
Yeah.
hasn't really stepped up yet, timely hitting. Pete is kind of starting to get hot again, which I like to see from Pete. Like I said earlier, hit the home run against Waka. Uh,
Yeah.
Beavers has been up and down for a rookie year. I will say that Dylan Beavers, I like him a lot, and he's one of those guys you won't see against Crochet on Saturday because that's what happened the last time they faced a lefty starter. They and Rodriguez from Arizona. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
they including bringing up a guy like Weston Wilson and guys like Rodriguez and guys like that. They're more righty. They're
Yeah.
righty bats. Not really great players, but they just did that just to play the matchup. And I
Yeah.
think Gunner was the only starter. This time they'll have Adley instead of Jay Huff behind the dish. So with Adley returning against Crochet, which should be good because I think Adley's had decent numbers against Crochet in his career. If I'm wrong on that, you can feel free to double check me on that. But I think
Yeah.
Adley against Crochet has been good. I can check that right now too while I'm thinking about
Yeah.
it. Um,
Well, and while you're checking that, it's gonna be very interesting because Boston right now is so absurdly skewed towards left-handed pitching.
yeah,
I forgot how much left-handed pitching we have on our roster right now because a lot of our righties have gone down with injuries, right?
yeah,
So we were talking about the bullpen, right? And obviously the very back of an end of our bullpen has still been very good. Chapman has been great. In the very limited amount of times he's had the opportunity to pitch,
yeah,
right? Whitlock's been pretty good as well.
yeah,
So if you look at the rest of the roster, right, we've got Giovanni Moran, who has been good, but he's a left-handed pitcher.
yeah,
Tyler Samaniego has been good, but he's a left-handed pitcher. He's actually
yeah,
hasn't given up a run yet, but he's a left-handed pitcher.
yeah,
Danny Colombe is a left-handed pitcher. He's been abysmal, but he's also a left-handed pitcher.
yeah.
And then in our rotation, right, we've got Connolly Early, who's a left-handed pitcher. We've got
That's
Peyton
another
Cole,
lefty.
who's a left-handed pitcher.
Early also is starting against Bradish this weekend too. I looked at on Sunday, for what I looked at. So and everything like that. So early. So you might see the Almanaz's righty heavy lineup against early too. Good call on that. While I have the time, sorry to interrupt with that because I wanted to point that out. I saw that earlier. I was like, I didn't know what hand or early threw, so I just wanted to. I knew Crochet threw left. I wanted to point that. You'll see the Auburn has righty heavy lineup to start games twice this weekend, probably.
Yeah.
But anyway, Rutschman is 1 for 6 against Crochet in the 2 games he's faced him, but the one hit was a homer. So
Okay.
So one hit
Gotcha.
was a homer.
Interesting.
So at least had like not really great success, like consistent success in the 6 at bats, but he has taken Crochet over the wall.
Got
So in his career, so that's like, that's still a better matchup than Basalo against lefties, because Basalo's approach against lefties has been abysmal in his career thus far.
Yeah.
For the most part, he's had a couple hits against, like couple time hits against them, but it's still not like what you want from a consistent day in, day out kind of a guy. So
sure.
we'll see how Basalo plays this weekend if he does get in, crack the lineup against the lefties. I see another thing I want to see is Gunnar against the 2 lefties too. Try to keep them improving and being better against going the opposite way. That's interesting. Now you say that. So that'll be interesting aspect of this series that we didn't really think about heading in. But I mean, we got plenty of time to talk. We'll talk full recap on Sunday of this series because that was the last game of the series.
For sure.
But we got pretty much close to wrapping it up, right, Chris? It's almost
I think
10,
so, yeah.
It's almost 10:40. We can go all day, but
yes.
It's a Friday. Friday afternoon.
Absolutely.
Got places to be. So let's go ahead and promote our stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So as always, make sure to be checking out Total Apex Sports and Total Apex Entertainment. We put out a ton of great content there. Obviously, if you want more baseball content, you're going to get plenty of it at Total Apex Sports. Make sure to check out our podcast every week on Sundays. I know we weren't here last week, but we're going to be consistently every Sunday unless something pops up. So please make sure to check us out. I know Brandon will have plenty more podcasts to highlight as well, but also make sure to check out our social media. My Twitter or X handle is on the screen. I also am under Christian B for Instagram and Mastodon and Blue Sky and TikTok and all sorts of other fun places. You can find me pretty much anywhere. So make sure to continue to check out our content there as well.
Yep. And you can find me on my X right there on 30BOs. I will have the NFL draft coverage throughout the weekend for Total Apex Sports on X as well. I will have the Instagram as well at _BOS32. Follow that as well. Also, I will say this as well. We got the baseball pod Sunday. Like I said, me and Chris probably talk about the whole Baltimore Boston series.
For sure.
As one of the highlights. So as a Baltimore fan, as a Boston fan, we're really going to talk about that series in depth a little bit more and how it plays out. And I think the final game will be done before the podcast. I think on Sunday, I think it'll be over.
Yeah.
So we'll actually have like a full picture of what happened. And everything like that in that series. Also want to shout out the new pilot and my co-host of the NBA podcast, Jacob Perrine. And we got the NBA Limitless Range podcast pilot. We actually had done some really good views on it so far for our stand, for the Total Apex meet, for like a little bump in the views there. We're going to keep that podcast alive. It's going to go well. Monday's show is going to be about the streaming, how the access to playoffs has been weird with the new Prime and NBC and all this stuff. So that's going to be something to look forward to with Monday. We had a couple upsets in the NBA playoffs too with the Wemby concussion and all that stuff. So big NBA podcast on Monday. So stay tuned for that. Also, stay tuned for the wrestling podcast. We just had our 9th episode last night, recapping WrestleMania 42 with Nick, Jerry, and myself, and everything like that. No Friday sports pod, but the main sports pod will be on Saturday night now because of the NFL draft. We'll just basically have an NFL draft reaction for the sports pod this week. No other sports will be on the sports pod this week. It will be just the NFL draft as we are relying on the other shows like the baseball show on Sunday and the NBA podcast on Monday to really get into the depths and stuff. So that's the plan with this weekend. But the regularly scheduled sports pod will be back next week on Friday. So that's the plan for that. Also, stay tuned for the Total Apex Media regular podcast too. All shebang of entertainment, gaming, all of that. This week they had a roundtable episode of AI. Just shout them out. Also, other podcasts too. They might be in the pipes. We just got a lot here at Total Apex Media, so stay tuned for that. And thank y'all for tuning into this little shorter version of the Off the Wall Baseball podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank y'all for tuning in. We really appreciate it, and we'll hopefully see y'all Sunday.
Peace
Have
out,
a good one.
everybody. Yep.